evening and welcome to the April 15th, 2019 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite Jada Weissel to the podium, and if everyone can please rise, Jada's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Just grab that. Yeah, there you go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very well done. Thank you very much, Jada. Next item on our agenda is reflection. And last week we issued our statement on the passing of Maryland Speaker of the House, Michael Bush. So I wanted to bring him up before we go into our moment of silence. I also wanted to call to your attention the passing of Stanley Plumlee, who was a former Maryland Poet Laureate and participant in the Gaithersburg Book Festival. We consider him part of the GBF family, and he passed away over the weekend as well. If we can have a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. We are going to move right into presentations, and I'm going to invite Mike and Ryan to join me for all of these, and Ryan is going to help me on this one in particular. And I'd like to invite Michael and Meredith Weissel and their children, Alexandra and Jada, to join us. Okay, just Jada. No time. Well done. Ryan, you come read the back. You guys.
You can stand behind me. I'm pretty short.
He's going to do proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This presentation each year is particularly meaningful for me as someone who had a significant portion of my extended family perish in the Holocaust. The Days of Remembrance is an annual 8-day period designated by the United States Congress to help citizens remember and draw lessons from the Holocaust. The period normally begins on the Sunday before the Jewish observance of Yom HaShoah, which is Holocaust Remembrance Day, and continues through the following Sunday. A national civic commemoration is held in Washington, D.C., with state, city, and local ceremonies and programs held in most of the 50 states. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum was created as a permanent living memorial to the victims and provides materials to help support and educate about remembrance efforts. Michael Weissel is the Men's Club president at Sharei Torah congregation here in Gaithersburg, and each year the club organizes their Holocaust remembrance projects for the synagogue and the broader community. Meredith Weissel works for the Jewish Community Relations Council, which represents the Jewish community to governments at every level throughout the region. And we're glad to have them and their daughter joining us here tonight to accept our proclamation.
I get to read the
proclamation. Your proclamation.
Proclamation of the Mayor and City Council of Gaithersburg. Whereas the Holocaust was the state-sponsored systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945, during which 6 million people were murdered. And whereas the United States Congress established this international recognition of the Days of Remembrance, which corresponds to the 27th day of Nisan, on the Hebrew calendar, and marks the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and the Holocaust Remembrance Day on Thursday, May 2nd, known as Yom HaShoah. And whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments, and to rededicate ourselves to the principles of individual freedom in a just society, and whereas the Days of Remembrance have been set aside for all people to remember the victims of the Holocaust, as well as to reflect on the need for respect of all people. Now, therefore, I, Judd Ashman, by the power vested in me as Mayor of Gaithersburg, do hereby proclaim the week of Sunday, April 28th through Sunday, May 5th, 2019 as Days of Remembrance in memory of the victims of the Holocaust and in honor of the survivors, rescuers, and liberators, and further proclaim that we, as citizens of the city of Gaithersburg, must work to promote human dignity and confront hate whenever and wherever it occurs. Proclaim this 15th day of April 2019, signed by me, and let's give them a round of applause for being here. Thank you. Yeah, not to put you on the spot. If you wanted to say a couple words, you're welcome to, but
I can if you want.
go right ahead.
I'm used to speaking. Just thank you to the mayor and council members who are here and to everybody for being here tonight. This is extremely important. All levels of government do proclamations like this, and it's wonderful to see the city of Gaithersburg as well. The rise in anti-Semitism, hate, and bigotry has just been increasing, and to remember and do things like this in remembrance of the Holocaust is so important today and every day. So we thank the city for doing the proclamation again this year. Thank you.
Okay, next is our proclamation for Older Americans Month, and no coincidence, we're gonna have Councilmember Sesma do this one.
Actually volunteered for this. I am the old. I might be the oldest one in the room tonight. All right. Every May, the Administration on Aging, part of the Administration for Community Living, leads our nation's observance of Older Americans Month. The 2019 theme, Connect, Create, Contribute, encourages older adults and their communities to connect with friends, family, and services that support participation, create by engaging in activities that promote learning, health, and personal enrichment, and contribute time, talent, and life experience to the benefit of others.
Time out. Let's invite Smitty
Oh, yes.
Bass up here too.
Smitty and Carolyn Bass. My good friend Carolyn Bass. And our good friend Smitty. See, the older American sometimes forgets which parts to read. Okay, the city will be celebrating Older Americans Month with its 11th annual Active Aging Expo, scheduled for Monday, May 6th at the Activity Center at Boer Park from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. The day will include interactive demonstrations, preventive screenings, educational lectures, and opportunities for pampering. Valuable information will also be provided by the nearly 80 different businesses, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations who will also be participating. We want to express our appreciation to this year's title sponsor, Asbury Methodist Village, for their continued support. And with that, I think, is the mayor going to read the proclamation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Notice I didn't need glasses.
All right. Proclamation of the Mayor and City Council of Gaithersburg. Whereas the City of Gaithersburg includes a thriving community of more than 12,000 residents over the age of 55. And whereas the active older adults who live, work, and participate in Gaithersburg programs deserve recognition for their positive impact on the culture, economy, and character of our community. And whereas older adults in our community have made and will continue to make countless contributions and sacrifices to ensure a better life for future generations. And whereas the City of Gaithersburg is committed to helping all individuals live longer and healthier lives by promoting activity, wellness, socialization, and education. Now, therefore, I, Judd Ashman, by the power vested in me as the Mayor of Gaithersburg, do hereby proclaim May 2019 as Older Americans Month in the City of Gaithersburg, supporting this year's theme, Connect, Create, Contribute, which encourages older adults and their communities to connect with friends, family, and services that support participation, create by engaging in activities that promote learning, health, and personal enrichment, and contribute time, talent, and a life experience to benefit others. Proclaim this 15th day of April 2019, signed by me, and thank you, Carolyn Bass, for receiving it. Carolyn, you are welcome to, if you like. Okay.
I just
Vinny?
encourage everyone to come to the Active Aging Expo, May the 6th. I think for either you or for any members of your family who would benefit from the many, many things that are featured there. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
We're hanging?
Yeah. I'm going to read this one, but you might as well just.
Be poetic.
So I'd like to invite my friend Lucinda Marshall to join me, and Kristen Kowalski, who is a poet local in Gaithersburg, and we're glad to have both of you here. You're welcome. Ironically, it's kind of ironic that April is Poetry Month, because didn't T.S. Eliot write April's the cruelest month, right?
There is that irony. Yes.
Yeah, it's ironic. So in 1995, the Academy of American Poets convened a group of publishers, booksellers, librarians, literary organizations, poets, and teachers to discuss the need and usefulness of a month-long holiday to celebrate poetry. The first National Poetry Month was held in 1996. While poets and poetry are celebrated year-round, National Poetry Month aims to highlight the extraordinary legacy and ongoing achievement of American poets, encourage the reading of poems, assist teachers in bringing poetry into their classrooms, increase the attention paid to poetry by national and local media, encourage increased publication and distribution by poetry books, and encourage support for poets and poetry. So we have a proclamation, and before I read it, I just want to say, I just want to give a plug not only to the book festival, which everybody's expecting here, but also my friend Lucinda, who has come on board this year as the poetry coordinator for the Gaithersburg Book Festival. Also, we sort of found her because she was running independently a group called the Diverse Poetry Readings. Diverse Gaithersburg Poetry Readings that happen every month, or have been happening every month at the Gaithersburg Library. They're going to be moving to the Quince Orchard Library. I've been to their events a couple of times, and the quality of readers and poets that Lucinda gets and offers to the community is really astonishing. It's really great. So it's only fitting that Lucinda's here to receive this proclamation of the Mayor and City Council of Gaithersburg, whereas the Academy of American Poets established the month of April as National Poetry Month in 1996, and it is now the largest literary celebration in the world. And whereas the recognition of poetry seeks to highlight the extraordinary legacy and ongoing achievement of American poets, to introduce the community to the pleasures and benefits of reading poetry, and to bring poets and poetry to the public in accessible and innovative ways. And whereas poetry has produced some of the nation's leading creative artists and has inspired other artists in fields such as music, theater, film, dance, and the visual arts. And whereas the city of Gaithersburg has become a center for the literary arts by virtue of hosting a regional book festival. You see how I threw that in there? You know,
Poets actually write books. That's perfect.
and and I get to write proclamations, so it all works. So that is now in its 10th year, and the city's residents celebrate the written word through reading, writing, and literacy initiatives throughout the year. Now, therefore, I, Judd Ashman, by the power vested in me as mayor of Gaithersburg, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as Poetry Month in the city of Gaithersburg, celebrating the cultural riches of our community has to offer, and encourage everyone to recognize the important role that poetry plays in our society. Proclaim this 15th day of April 2019, signed by me. Let's give these ladies a great round of applause.
Very disappointed this proclamation was not
It was
on my
not
pen.
well version. Lucinda, do you want to say a couple words?
Yeah, just for certain, come out and join us at the book festival. We will have a number of poets, including our current poet laureate, Grace Cavalieri, who is also the judge of our first ever poetry contest for high schoolers. And the diverse Gaithersburg readings will start up again in the fall at Quince Orchard, and we would love to have you come join us for those too. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, back to your seats. Okay, next on our agenda is an update, a post-session update from our District 17 delegation. And we have, as well as well, I guess the next item is from our lobbyist and our own team. So we're delighted here to have our entire District 17 team here. I don't know who wants to go first. Kumar?
That would be me.
Welcome, Kumar Barbe. It's great to have you here.
Well, I'm disappointed to say that I didn't rework the highway user formula to get you even more money than last year. So
There's always next year.
there's always next year, right? Well, first of all, it's a great pleasure to be here. I always look forward to this. I'm glad it's not raining tonight. As for some reason, I always have a great time here, but getting here is kind of damp, and it wasn't tonight. So that was just an added thing. Wonder why I don't have a quorum. I don't know. Anyway.
So you just blew in for the night.
That's right. I've been racking my brain for the last 5 minutes trying to rhyme, and I'm not good at that. So, in any case, first of all, thank you so much for beginning the proceedings with a moment of silence for Speaker Mike Bush. He was a good friend of mine, and he was a mentor to me, and I always like to explain the relationship I had with him by saying the two Mikes in my career. Mike Gordon taught me how to pass bills, but Mike Bush was the guy who taught me big policy formulation. I got an opportunity to watch the master think big, put together big ideas, and then assemble coalitions of diverse groups of people to carry them out. And sometimes it took several years to do what was intended. And it's a shame to have lost him, but it was a great honor to see him be received into the state capitol building this morning, and tomorrow will be the funeral, and I intend to be there for that. So let me say that I continue as the chair of the Environment and Transportation Committee, which has to do primarily with environment and transportation, and also real property ethics and so many other things. Jim Gilchrist is a member of my committee, and this year on the House side, we're so happy to have Julie Polakovich-Carr to be a member of ours. You'll be hearing from her shortly. She's done a terrific job in her first session in Annapolis. She's on the Ways and Means Committee that I spent 8 years on. And of course, I want to shout out to Monica, who does a terrific job representing the city and being a liaison for all four of us when we're in Annapolis for 90 days. Thanks a lot, Monica. So let me start off with, I'm going to focus primarily on my committee, and then others will fill in, and whatever questions you have, we'll be happy to answer them. Let me begin with the biggest issue, one that was a great concern to the speaker and me, had to do with oysters. And one of the big fights in Annapolis and in Maryland is the fight between watermen who want to remove more oysters from the bay and conservationists and environmentalists who don't. And oysters, in addition to being yummy, also filter the water of the Chesapeake Bay. And so it's very important to have a proper balance. And there were two bills that we passed, one that was sponsored by the speaker, which we presented to the governor, and the governor vetoed it, and we had an opportunity to override his veto. And that was a bill that took, of the 51 designated oyster sanctuaries in the Chesapeake Bay. It took 5 of them completely off limits for fishing of oysters, and it was a hard decision. It was a correct decision. The science supported it, and I'm glad that we were able to accomplish that. The other bill, the one that I sponsored, basically creates what is hopefully a collaborative process in establishing what the fishing management plan will be for the other sanctuaries. It's a group composed 60% of business, meaning watermen and members of that industry, 40% from the environmental community and other community groups. And in order to arrive at a decision, they have to come to a 75% consensus. And this method has been used in smaller settings, the Choptank River, which some of you may be familiar with. And the beautiful thing about having a requirement for a 75% consensus is it depoliticized the decision making, and it made it something that the end product was something that pretty much everybody bought into. And it's our hope that we can do that for the entire Chesapeake Bay, really to depoliticize the decision of where fishing cannot happen. That's our hope. Jim, would you like to talk about chlorpyrifos, or do you have other things you want to talk about?
I was going to talk about the renewable portfolios.
Okay, fine. I'll talk about chlorpyrifos. We passed a bill that was sponsored by my vice chairman that would ban the use of chlorpyrifos, a pesticide in agriculture. This is an example of a substance that was about to be banned by the U.S. EPA, and when the new Trump administration came in, they they actually slammed on brakes and really put aside a lot of the scientific research that had been established. And what we're doing is we went against that, and we've taken the advice of scientists, and we've passed a bill that says no level of chlorpyrifos is safe in food and drinking water, and we stepped up at least to do that. Unfortunately, the bill did not pass in the Senate. Our bill was passed and rolled. Unfortunately, the Senate did not follow the House's lead. The bill was neither bills were passed, and so it's an ongoing effort that we are having. These environmental struggles take place over a very long number of years. It took us 2.5 years to ban fracking and functionally ban offshore oil drilling. And it's our hope that this will be successful in the future. Another issue that's been very big, before I conclude, it was the one that had to do with public-private partnerships to expand the Beltway and I-270. There were, I think, 7 bills that were introduced. We were in negotiation with the governor on at least making sure that no new land was taken, that the I-270 wasn't expanded. I personally am confused as to why they didn't start with expanding I-270 north of Gaithersburg to Frederick, which is where the real choke point is on I-270. Well, we passed a bill in the House, House Bill 1091, that was sponsored by a Montgomery County delegate in a neighboring district, which would have at least required that an environmental impact statement be finalized before solicitations would be put out for public-private partnerships. The bill didn't pass in the Senate. I'm not blaming Cheryl. She wasn't the reason for that. But the bill didn't pass a committee that Cheryl does not sit on. And so we're hopeful that we're going to be able to negotiate, find a common ground between now and the next General Assembly session. And then finally, an issue that I know you're very interested in was money for the police station, which I think Cheryl is going to talk about. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. And with respect to the renewable energy portfolio standard, Jim's going to fill you in on the details, but there is one role that my committee has on this, and Jim is going to be central to this, and that is to get to 50% renewable energy, you actually have to produce that energy in the state of Maryland. And that is one of the thorniest land use issues that we have in Maryland. Farmers oftentimes don't like solar energy. People don't like wind energy in many instances, and we're going to have to find a strategy for moving forward and being able to regulate this in a way that won't harm the interests of farmers, but at the same time will create opportunities for producing more solar energy. And so those are a rough sketch of all those things. I will say that we were very lucky in my committee to have freshman delegates who are as terrific as Julie is. Julie wasn't on my committee, but the freshman class this year really has been fantastic, and I think you'll see that in the work that she does and the things that she has to say. And so with that, I'll conclude, and I don't know who's going next. Oh, Jim. Okay. So Delegate Gilchrist will go next.
Thank you, Kumar. Welcome, Jim.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. As we said, I'll talk a little bit about renewable portfolio standard and maybe a little bit about healthcare policy. But renewable portfolio standard was first passed in 2004 in Maryland, and it was an effort to gradually shift energy in the state to cleaner sources. And so here we are 15 years later, and we had a goal for 25% by 2020. What we did was we increased the goal to 50% by 2030. So over the next 10 years, basically, continue this gradual process of less and less greenhouse gases being emitted through Maryland utilities. The bill also increases the solar requirement. It increases wind power use in the state, and also a study about how to get us to 100% renewable energy. So that it's a gradual process. It is an alarming situation with greenhouse gases and the greenhouse effect in the country. So Maryland is doing its part. We're moving forward on that. I want to talk just a little bit about healthcare. Last year, we stabilized the individual healthcare market by putting a fee on health insurance plans. It was the federal fee that was discontinued. And after we did that, the health insurance companies, they'd asked for a 30% increase in individual health rates. Then they asked for a 23% after we did that, and they still got like a 10 or 13% increase. We're continuing that program. Healthcare rates are still going up too fast, but we're working on that as well. So I also want to thank you for starting off with the moment of silence for the speaker. His funeral is tomorrow, and I appreciate all the work you do with us, and Monica and others. We see them during session. Barbara, our new lobbyist, has been great, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know if you guys noticed walking in, but our flags are still at half staff for the speaker as well.
And the Governor Hughes, former Governor Hughes, died just a month ago, and also very sad for the state.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Julie, welcome.
Good evening. I'm delighted to be here for the first time in this capacity. So as Kumar mentioned, I was appointed to the Ways and Means Committee. Clearly deals with tax policy, but it also deals with K-12 education policy as well as election law. So I just was going to give a few updates in those topic areas. So education, this was a big year in terms of starting to implement the recommendations from a commission that's been meeting for several years. It's colloquially called the Kerwin Commission. Its official title is the Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education. They released a pretty comprehensive set of recommendations in this past year in terms of how to get Maryland's public schools back to being the best public school system in the nation. Maryland was ranked #1 not that many years ago, but we've slipped to about 11th or 12th at this point. So this was the first year where we were starting to put together legislation that would actually implement the recommendations of that commission. And the Blueprint for Maryland's Future is the bill that passed this year. It includes $255 million for education programs, everything from implementing universal pre-K for 4-year-olds and for low-income 3-year-olds, addressing communities where there's concentrated poverty and providing some additional grant money to provide wraparound services in schools that are dealing with kind of systemic poverty. And there actually are a number of schools in District 17 and throughout Montgomery County that qualify for that additional funding. As well as things like raising teacher salaries, because teacher retention has been a big issue. So that bill was a pretty sweeping reform. It really is a down payment, though, on what's to come in future years. But Montgomery County stands to bode pretty well in terms of getting some additional funding in programs that really will help our students and our public school system here. In addition, the state budget that was passed does include school construction money for a number of school revitalization and rebuilding projects, including for a couple here in Gaithersburg. Rosemont and Diamond Elementary Schools got funding through the state budget. And lastly, on education, an issue I've heard from a lot of families about, and I think has been covered pretty well in the media, has been concerns about lead in drinking water at schools. We did pass legislation that starts to get at that issue because of the health concerns, basically, for students and for staff at schools. On the tax front, one of the bills that I sponsored this year was at the request of the city of Gaithersburg, has to do with the municipalities being able to assess a hotel tax on small hotels with 10 or fewer rooms because of a quirk and a provision in state law that goes back about a decade. Gaithersburg and some other municipalities were not able to assess that hotel tax on small hotels or short-term rentals, but thankfully we did pass that bill. That was great working with Monica and with Barbara to get that through.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was that not your first passed piece
It
of past
was.
legislation?
It was.
We are honored that you did that in service to our request.
Certainly. Well, and the even better news is that there was another bill that passed that I did not sponsor, but that actually is going to require Airbnb and these other technology platforms to proactively collect the tax and to remit it back to local governments. Airbnb, for instance, already was doing that in other states, but they are kind of being forced to do it state by state, and now they're going to have to do it here in Maryland. So if Gaithersburg chooses to assess that hotel tax on small hotels and short-term rentals, those platforms are going to have to proactively collect the tax on your behalf. Otherwise, in terms of tax policy, one of the things that I was really proud that we passed this year was an expansion of the child and dependent care tax credit. Historically, that has been a tax credit for fairly low-income households, but we expanded the income range. So now joint filers who make up to $143,000 a year actually will be able to qualify for some tax relief in terms of their child care expenses, or alternately, if they have, say, an aging parent that they're paying for a caregiver for or something like that, and to get some tax money back. On the election law front, probably the biggest piece of legislation that we passed this year was implementation of same-day voter registration. If you recall, that passed overwhelmingly statewide on the ballot this past November, and we did pass the laws that are actually going to implement that and put that into effect in time for the 2020 elections. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight one other bill that I sponsored that Chairman Barve was so helpful with, Vision Zero. This is a roadway safety initiative that Montgomery County is already pursuing, but this would take the program statewide. About 550 people die each year on Maryland roads. Most of them are drivers, but there are a number of pedestrians and bicyclists that are killed too. And this program kind of takes a different approach at looking at how we can actually prevent those fatalities by having better infrastructure and designing safer systems. So I'm very excited that that bill passed the General Assembly as well. And I think next we'll have our wonderful State Senator, Cheryl Kagan.
Thank you very much, Julie. Welcome, Cheryl.
Good evening. It's really good to be here. And no, Julie and I did not compare notes before we each picked out our jacket. But I guess it shows great minds think alike, and we work together really well. And to echo what Delegate Barvate said, Julie did a wonderful job in her maiden session, and her experience in municipal government as a Rockville City Council member served her well. So I really want to give a shout out. I want to thank you, members of the mayor and council, as well as, and I just want to echo, Monica Marquina is always a rock star, and having Barbara Zektik added to our team was a great asset. In the Senate this year, 18 of the 47 senators were serving their first term. We had a younger, more diverse, and more female Senate. We also had 3 of our 4 standing committees with new chairs, and all 4 of the committees had new vice chairs. So there was a lot of new energy and new ideas. We've already talked about the Speaker of the House and his really tragic passing the day before we adjourned. But it's from the beginning of session, we've all been struggling through and really feeling such pain and empathy for the Senate President, Mike Miller, as he is addressing stage 4 prostate cancer. And so I'd ask for all of you and for anyone watching to please keep him in your thoughts and prayers. There were days when he was, Mike Miller, and the longest serving Senate President in the nation's history, and strong and vibrant, and there were days when he was clearly in pain. And so it's been tough, and we all wish him the best. I'm going to start by doing some big picture stuff, and then I'll talk about some of the legislation, and then pivot to Gaithersburg briefly. The Kerwin Commission, Julie talked about education funding. Over $500 million in school construction money is a big deal. We're talking about a 10-year package of fiscal investment. We were able to fund the first 2 years, but in future years, we're going to have to be creative into how to continue to do everything that Maryland does, and yet also set aside funding for the investments that's going to really take our schools back up. Clean energy jobs passed on the last day, and that's very exciting. The senator from the next door district, Brian Feldman, sponsored that, and that's going to be a big thing. We already heard about renewable portfolio standard. Kumar talked about chlorpyrifos. I can tell you that my Senate committee and I supported banning this terrible chemical, and unfortunately it had to be sent back to our committee. This was not going to be the year to spend countless hours debating, because the Republicans had made it clear that they were going to monopolize time, and there were too many other bills that were pending. And so it was unfortunately a strategic decision as we were running out of time. I know you all know that we have 90 days, and at midnight on the last night, anything that hasn't passed, the full Senate and the full House, and on its way up to the governor's mansion, the governor's desk, in exactly the same form, dies. And so there were a lot of things that were really plowing through the pipeline that really had to get done. So unfortunately this year, chlorpyrifos did not move. My chairman, who is new and did a supremely good job, has promised to take that up in January and not wait for it in April. So hopefully the House can help us with that by sending it over fast, and we'll move the Senate version and the House version. Health care we didn't really talk about yet, so I will just mention that one of the big issues that might interest people is the state of Maryland, assuming the governor signs it, is increasing the age to purchase tobacco and vaping and other tobacco and addictive products from 18 to 21. And we think that's going to be good for public safety and public health. Protecting our federal employees during the government shutdown is a problem, and there was the very first bill that the governor signed was allowing those who were on furlough and were not being paid, but were essential. They were deemed essential, and they had to show up for work, and yet weren't being paid, were ineligible because they were working. They were ineligible for unemployment benefits. So they kind of had the worst of all worlds, and they had problems paying their bills and stuff. So there was legislation that we sped through that was signed into law to take care of our federal employees. And hopefully the folks in Washington will do better in the future and we won't have this situation. But if so, we've tried to take care of our Marylanders. The school calendar has been a big controversy over recent years since Governor Hogan, in my opinion, made a really ill-advised executive order in saying one size fits all, and we all are required to start schools after Labor Day. And that really doesn't work in Montgomery County. First off, we believe in local control. We elect our school board, and they should be able to decide when school should start. And the reality is that we need teacher planning days, we need snow days, we need religious holidays. We want spring break for our families, and none of that is possible with the really tight constraints that his executive order dictated. So there was legislation, he vetoed it, we overrode the veto, and it may end up on the ballot next year, but we hope that our local school boards are going to end up being able to do what's right for them and for their local kids, and that's what we're hoping for in Montgomery County. Legislation to make sure that all rape kits are tested and tested in an expedited manner is important. That is shocking that there are survivors of rape whose kits have never been processed and they are on backlog. So that hopefully was addressed and will move forward quickly. Death with dignity was a really, whether you call it compassionate choice or end-of-life option, the House passed it, and I really give props to the members of the House. It's a challenging decision, and I think it is extremely personal and private, and should be something that each of us has to decide with our medical providers and our faith leaders, and with our own friends and family, and it's our own business. Unfortunately, in the Senate, the vote was 23 to 23 to 1. There was one colleague who chose not to vote, even though he was in the chamber. I was a co-sponsor. I believe that we should have compassionate choice, And I'm hoping we can move that forward in the future. We heard from a lot of people in Gaithersburg and Rockville, and I am hopeful that that is in our future. I was really proud to have been included as a winner by Maryland Matters in their wrap-up piece. Maryland Matters, I'm sure you all know, but maybe some folks at home don't know, is a great source of information for what's going on around our state, kind of an insider perspective. And they recognize that I passed a lot of my bills, including several that I've worked on for many years. First off, you've heard me speak for many years about 911, and I'm very proud, after 5 years of working in memory of our friend Carl Henn, who was struck by lightning and when 911 was overloaded, could not help save his life. For 5 years, I've been working on this, chairing a statewide commission, and this year, all 3 of the bills for 911 passed, and hopefully will be signed in the next couple of weeks by the governor. I'm really proud of that. The statewide commission that I chair released a 65-page report in December. It had 23 recommendations. They all passed unanimously, and that's what guided our legislative work. And so that very exciting. And we're going to be able to move to next generation 911 with updated technology, cybersecurity protection, as well as staffing and adjusting the funding. It's a big bill that will mean a lot for public safety. Another bill that I'm really excited about after 3 years, Gaithersburg was on board early, Montgomery County, Rockville finally caught up, but banning polystyrene, expanded polystyrene or styrofoam. So DC had done it, Prince George's, Montgomery, Baltimore City, the city of Annapolis, and then just a couple months ago, Anne Arundel County. And with all of those, 52%, over half of Marylanders were living in a place that had a styrofoam ban for food and beverages. And Kumar Barve, the chair of the Education of the Environment and Transportation Committee, and Jim helped work the House side, and we took care of it on the Senate. And we are the very first nation, the state in the nation, to be foam-free, and that is a big deal. Other states are going to be looking to emulate that. I've been working with longtime Montgomery County Police Chief Tom Manger on what I called Freedom to Serve, which allows legal permanent residents who are not yet citizens, but who have been honorably discharged from our military to apply to become police officers. Current law says that you have to be a citizen, an American citizen, in order to protect our communities. And yet there are folks who have already put their lives on the line to protect our country, and we think if they're willing and they want to protect our cities or counties, that we should encourage them to apply. So that bill passed as well. The next one that I just want to reference that was really a big deal is last fall I uncovered that the Technology Development Corporation, which was established in 1998 to take Maryland taxpayer money and invest it in Maryland tech startups to create Maryland jobs, was investing in, I kid you not, Kansas, Connecticut, Delaware, and they were bragging about their return on investment, but that was not the point. The return on investment is in jobs here. And we started that process after an enormously damaging state audit was released just a few days before my bill hearing. We ended up creating an enormous and very comprehensive bill that's going to require much better transparency, investment processes, clamping down on conflict of interest, ethical. There were just a lot of problems. And so we're really cleaning that up, and I was at the forefront of that. I passed a few election bills, including one that's going to require live streaming of our Board of Elections, and also dealing with what happens when a candidate dies with an election account that's active. The last thing I just want to mention, nope, not the last thing. I've got a few more things. First off, anyone watching, Friday at 4 o'clock is the deadline for senatorial scholarships. We all deal with, we all have scholarship money. My information and the application can be found at cherylkagan.org. Don't be late, and make sure you write a really good essay, but do spread the word. Undergraduate or graduate students, I have a committee that makes the decisions. I don't have a vote, but it just goes to residents of my, of our district here. And Julie, Jim, and Kumar deal with theirs differently, but we all have resources, so make sure that, that folks are checking that out. In terms of Gaithersburg, I made it very clear. So there was $2 million in the state budget for the new police station that desperately needed, new Gaithersburg Police Station. And when I was asked by the folks in charge of our budget and our budgetary projects, what my priorities were, I said my top priority is the Gaithersburg Police Station. And the second priority is the Gaithersburg Police Station. And the third priority is the Gaithersburg Police Station. And then I also wanted money for Manna Food Pantry and Sunflower Bakery and other projects. But this was a tough year. We had to find hundreds of millions of dollars for education funding that I talked about earlier. So the fact that we were able to protect $1 million in this year's budget with a keep our fingers crossed. Looks good, though, for next year, the other million. So rather than getting it in 1 year, we'll get it in 2 years. And we still have to stay active and visible and make sure that we're really advocating for that. But I'm really proud of that, and that was my top priority. Money for the Consumer Product Safety Commission site was another big thing, and that got through the Board of Public Works. I made sure they knew that I thought that was a really good project, and I continue to be impressed by that. Michelle Potter and all that you do. And with that, I just want to congratulate Ryan Spiegel for your leadership at the Maryland Municipal League. The mayor of Rockville is our current president, but hopefully Ryan will be our president next year. I'm really proud to be a municipal superstar and to continue to work with the Maryland Municipal League on your legislative priorities. And I just want to mention that my colleague and friend, Silver Spring and Tacoma Park Senator Will Smith, Senator Smith has just been deployed to Afghanistan, and he'll be there away from his wife and beautiful daughter until later this fall. And we are putting together care packages. We're all writing letters to him and stuff. And I just really want to publicly thank Gaithersburg for including some swag for the very first care package that we're sending. It's coming from Rockville, from Gaithersburg, and from the county, just to let him know that we are worried about him and that we want him to be successful over there and come home safely. So thank you for all of that, and thanks for all you do. Happy to take questions for the four of us.
First off, let me say thanks to our entire delegation. On behalf of our council, some of whom aren't here this evening, but it happens to be spring break and travel season for some of us. We all enjoy working with you. We're all proud of the job that you do. We're all extremely happy with the partnership we've had and will continue to have. We all feel like this was clearly was a successful session for you guys. We feel like for the city of Gaithersburg, we had with our own agenda, and we felt like with your help, we were very successful this year. This was a banner year for us in Annapolis, and we can't thank you enough. I'm gonna let's go with Mike first, and then Ryan.
Do you all want to come up? If you want to ask of the four of us, I assume I'm not the
I don't
only
know if
one.
we have questions or just
Okay.
just statements about
Just
how
wanting
great
to
everybody
then.
is, but we'll see.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, I
Light
think,
blue.
Right, every other.
yeah, it's hard, I don't want to repeat everything that Judd just said, but it does bear repeating, and we thank you very much for that hard work. Not only did you get these major issues taken care of, both for yourselves and for not just Gaithersburg, but other cities as well, but I think you also helped us make sure that we took care of some other issues that were threats to local government authority, in particular the small cell bill.
Yeah.
And we've heard that we did that collectively we did such a great, the we is collective, we've done such a great job that the industry is probably not going to come back next year with an industry-based bill, which I think is a pretty important thing. I don't know that if that's the first time that local government has had that kind of victory in the U.S. in terms of this legislation, but I think it's something to brag about. We couldn't have done it without the support of this delegation and the rest of
And the
many
county
others in
council. I
Annapolis.
think we ought to give a shout out to Council Member Tom Hucker and the rest of the county council, because I think they set the tone. And then by the time I got to Annapolis, they kind of knew they were under fire.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just one of the things. So again, thank you for all the hard work on our behalf, and we'll be coming back next year with a long list. Ryan's keeping a list, so I'll let him know.
That's right.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, and let me echo what's already been said, and not just tonight, but many times before. You are an outstanding team. We are very lucky to have you and to work with you. And we do consider this year to have been an extremely successful year, both for the city of Gaithersburg, for District 17 generally, and for the Maryland Municipal League and our priorities statewide among the cities and towns that we work with. So thanks so much to all of you for working on a really broad spectrum of issues and covering a lot of ground and tackling some very difficult funding issues. We certainly understand that here in Gaithersburg. We're in the middle of our budgeting season now. And I just want to thank you all very much. I am, as Mike said, starting to kind of stew and plot about some of the issues that we might want to discuss during the break and preparing to go into the next session in next year. But one of the things that I just wanted to raise now publicly, because there's been so much great talk about the ambitious goals for environmental protection and renewables here in the state and all the wonderful work that you're doing on that. We certainly try our best at the more microcosmic level here at the municipal government level to try and do things that are innovative and work towards energy efficiency and renewables and environmentalism and doing our part. And we do a lot of things. But one of the things that I've been trying to explore with my colleagues is more solar roof fit outs for our municipal buildings. And we've been running into some challenges in terms of the economics of it. Because if you're a single homeowner, you can put solar panels on your roof and the economics will work whether you buy the panels yourself or whether you enter into some power purchase agreement. But if you're a larger entity, like a local government, then it seems like the economy of scale doesn't quite work, and we've been challenged by dealing with various nonprofits and other organizations that provide solar panels who say, we don't really have enough space on our roofs here on the municipal buildings in the city, and we would have to, contribute to a field somewhere outside the city, a solar field, to supplement that in order to make it viable.
Community solar, something like community solar.
And we have community solar here in the city of Gaithersburg. We've sort of signed up for it and made it available to our residents. But in terms of actually putting the panels on our city roofs, I'd love to work with you all and talk about some creative ways we might be able to make that happen more easily.
Sure. I mean, the economics of putting solar on a roof is a lot more expensive than putting it in a field where they exist and plants still grow underneath them, but the economics is very challenging. I'd love to work with you on this.
Sure. We appreciate that.
Speaking about environmental legislation that I didn't reference, but something I was really excited about that Gaithersburg employers might want to be aware of, is that Senator Chris West, a freshman from Baltimore County, a Republican, came up with great legislation that I worked with him on in my committee that is going to expand recycling in large office buildings, and it's going to require it. And again, so the office building owners, I think, were a little surprised that it was a Republican coming at them with this, and so they really came and showed up at the table, and we came up with good legislation that will be mandated, assuming the governor signs it and it goes into law. It's only really large buildings, but it sort of starts us down the road towards getting better sort of office recycling that doesn't necessarily exist now in most places.
Yeah, they did a good job in the Senate. We really hardly had to amend it at all when it got to our committee. I didn't mean to sound snarky. I really meant it as a compliment. I didn't mean to sound
Totally
snarky.
heard it that way.
Well, thank you all.
It up
Thank
at
you.
all. Before we go, if I can just give out a shout out to Tony Tomasello and especially Lynn Board, who's really active in the Maryland Municipal League as a city attorney and stuff. So it's really important, the whole team. And I already referenced Michelle Potter, but her work statewide and throughout the region on rec and parks and all the things that the supremely competent, hardworking, dedicated folks and on the city staff do every day. It's really our pleasure to represent you all.
Thanks for saying that. We join you in appreciation of our team members. They're wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
See you.
All right. So next we are going to hear from Barbara Zektik, and we're going to hear from Monica Markina from our city and lobbying firm's perspective of the session. Take it away.
Okay, well, I was checking off everything as they went through the list, so I won't go through anything that they went through, but I do want to thank all of you and also all of our staff. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes, so you kind of see the final result of all that work. There's constant emails back and forth, a lot of research that gets people at the last minute have to drop some testimony or testify, like the chief did on the police station funding. So all that, and Barbara was an amazing asset to all that effort as well. So I think we went through everything. As I said, we were very successful in Annapolis this year, especially on the funding front. And we had an early win with the small cell legislation. I believe we are the first state to push back on the industry. So that was definitely a huge win.
We're counting it as a win. The industry could change its mind. I don't want to jinx this.
No. At least for this year,
Yeah.
right? It was definitely a win for this year, exactly.
Definitely a win for this year.
So there was only one bill that I was going through that no one talked about. Was actually we were going to, once we open up our master plan, we were going to include required to include a housing element. So we are going to have to address affordable housing within the local jurisdiction, including workforce housing and low-income housing. It may include goals, objectives, and policies. So we've already had preliminary discussions with our planning staff. So I think that's on the forefront. We have a little bit of time, but if we're going to be opening up our master plan for some other element, we might as well be ahead of that. I know we're a leader in affordable housing in the city of Gaithersburg, so just to kind of put that on your radar to know that we now have to include a housing element.
Okay.
How is that different than what we already do? We already have those
There wasn't a
elements.
legally mandated
Right.
element.
This is an actual element that has to be part of the master plan process. So you've submitted to the state. It goes with all the
Oh,
other.
all right. Okay.
I don't think it'll be a heavy lift.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna be
Yeah.
hard for
But
us.
we're gonna
We've
be
been
opening
doing
up
it
soon,
for,
so, yeah.
Right.
It's
we've
not
been
heavy
doing it
lift
for 12 years.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think that is it. We're still going through the bills, so there may be other things that we'll let you know about. But
And I was a poetry major in college, so forgive me for a moment, but we're happy to report, Mr. Mayor, that this session, Gaithersburg fared very well. We got all the money for the police station, because it wouldn't have been funny if all of your Gaithersburg Masons could only build half of the station. We also did well on taxes for hotels, and we staved off some bad stuff with small cells. So thank you, Senator Kagan, and Delegates Barve, Gilchrist, and Polakovich-Carr. And that's about as far as I'm going to go, because nothing rhymes with Polakovich-Carr. I got nothing else.
And not just that report, but Barbara, we commend you on your work on behalf of the city of Gaithersburg this session. You did a tremendous job. And Monica, as always, we're always singing your praises, Monica, but together you guys did a fantastic job.
It really has been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is public comments. This is the time the mayor and council like to hear from anybody who'd like to speak on any topic they like for up to 3 minutes. We ask that you state your name and address or neighborhood for the record. And when your time's down to 30 seconds, the timer will beep and turn yellow. When your time's up, it will beep and turn red. See, we have Aaron up here who'd like to be the first speaker. Please take it away, Aaron.
My name is Aaron Rosenzweig from Wesley. I submit to the council 50 signatures, all City of Gaithersburg residents who advocate for a strict no-kill, no-transport policy for beavers. We are requesting 3 council members to place this discussion on the official agenda. I realize we don't have that tonight, but the mayor could do so. The humane treatment of our furry neighbors is a worthy conservation topic and good for us all. In 2012, we exterminated beavers, paying $200 per head. The city has had years to plan for coexistence, but has not done so. In 2019, we removed 3 beavers and lost a 4th. Here is a photo of one of the place traps in the Kentlands. As you see, the water is nearly above the cage. Suffocation is a terrifying way to die. If citizens treated animals this way, we would all demand the filing of animal abuse charges. Killing, transporting beavers will not stop new beavers from moving in. Beavers are attracted to the drainage systems and lakes of our Gaithersburg communities. It's like a huge magnet, or better, a beaver made in heaven theme park. Unless we take steps to coexist, then there will always be a problem. The following should be part of any permanent solution. Install a beaver deceiver. It takes only a day and prevents beavers from clogging up the drainage paths, which mean they will not cause flooding. You can see them at beaverdeceivers.com. Rockville started using beaver deceivers in 2014 at the Mount Vernon Stormwater Management Pond with great success. I have a video here. Important trees must be wrapped. This is a photo from the Mount Vernon. in Rockville. Important trees must be wrapped, protected, otherwise beavers will hurt or destroy them. We must leave some trees for them to destroy, or let them have saplings and invasive species. Let landscapers dump their branches for them. Installing a beaver deceiver is very cost effective. Sure, trapping and moving them seems like a quick, inexpensive fix, but new beavers will come again and again, and we'll face this problem over and over. By installing beaver deceivers, we protect our drainage, shelter our important trees, and enjoy a lasting permanent solution. The beavers will thrive, and young and old alike will enjoy seeing these curious creatures. It will become a local attraction. All the experts agree that this is the way to go. Anything else is an exercise in futility. We are asking for 3 council members or the mayor to place this discussion on the official agenda. Let's have a serious discussion on the long-term, strict, no-kill, no-transport policy for beavers. The Humane Society says the fundamental issue, however, is whether relocation is ever the right approach, and I would want to encourage reconsideration on this point, what happened in the Kentlands. This has special significance for community vision from the start as one that seeks to preserve suitable, viable wildlife habitat for ecological, aesthetic, and emotional reasons. Humane Society said that they were willing to assist Gaithersburg in developing an approach for coexistence today, but we turned them down. Thank you.
Dima, did you want to come up and speak? Okay. We'll hear from Dima, and then I'll ask staff for report on this.
How did you know I wanted to speak?
I just guessed.
Just curious. Dimo Chrysos, I live in the Kentlands, which is kind of part of this conversation because I've been there for 26 years, and when the city was very much helping that community get off the ground, we were all in there fighting together. And I think that we all kind of agreed to a mutual trust that the investment that homeowners like me were making in a community that had not a clear vision, or the vision was clear, but there were all the experts that said it would never work, we still went ahead with it. And we stayed in that community. And I've been there 26 years, and there have been a lot of people that have been there a long time. And I'm here, ready, to thank you for doing exactly what you said you were going to do regarding the beavers, and to thank Tony for following through with the plan. And I understand there's a lot of pressure. And I understand that Aaron is very passionate about his point of view, and I think that's good that we air out those things. If you want to build areas that are beaver sanctuaries, that's fine. But to say that we have to, in a blanket kind of way, just coexist with any invasive species, I have a problem with that, especially with homes that are that close to the areas. We didn't have beavers in Kentlands, not to this degree or anything that produced this much damage for the 26 years I was there. So to say that they're there all the time and they're just going to come back, well, I don't know why they suddenly came, but that's not the case. And I just want to leave you with this thought. The property that the city controls, the degree to which you care for that land, is the city's calling card. So when people come into Gaithersburg, that's what they notice. They kind of look at all these areas, and if they're kept up, and if they're not in some sort of, they don't look like they've been neglected, people have a view of the city, which has a view of the businesses in that city and the view of the homes that are in that city. So I'm just saying, what the experience that we went through in Kentlands, and I mean, you can go down there and the areas that were, I don't know what the tree count is at this point, but it looks like a meteorite went over certain parts of this thing, and I'm kind of thinking, that's not a good calling card for the property that the city owns. So again, I want to thank you for doing what you did, and welcome any other conversation about this, but I just don't think that trying to say that a community as close to that situation as in the Kentlands is an example of the kind of coexist parameter that you should ever include in any kind of blanket. Any kind of blanket thing that you decide to do.
Thank you, Dimo.
All right.
you coming up and thanking us makes me extra sorry that my colleagues aren't here to appreciate that. Do we have any other speakers this evening? Okay, not seeing any. Tony, my understanding is that some of the items that Aaron brought up were already being looked at by city staff. You want to talk about that?
We do not have, have not been able to come up with a comprehensive program to manage these animals, comprehensively in the few months that we've been dealing with this. As Demo mentioned, this is fairly new to be within the suburban environment of the kennels. We are focused right now on being better prepared to identify them, to wrap trees quickly, to respond, again, more quickly than we were able to here, to have supplies on hand, those types of things. It shouldn't be lost on anyone that Gaithersburg was, in fact, the municipality that led the charge to not have beavers euthanized in the first place, 6 or 7, 8 years ago, whatever that was.
Wasn't that at Quince Orchard Park?
Yeah, it was at Quince Orchard
Yes,
Park.
that was at Quince Orchard Park. But the old law was, required euthanization. So we were the ones that fought that. The prospect of, a theme park or whatever it was just characterized for beavers, we just don't have that type of expansive property. I've been doing some research about some of the towns out west in the western United States that have, large areas that need water management and that need water quality issues, and they're happy to let beavers take that over. That's not really a practical solution for us. We faced with this kind of first challenge, I thought we responded pretty well, and that we're better prepared now to respond than we were in the past. But we were limited by the time of year, but we were patient. I appreciated the patience of the people in the neighborhood. Some were more patient than others, but everyone was pretty patient, and we did manage to relocate 3. The 4th was also characterized as lost, making it sound like it had perished at our hands or something, but in fact, we just didn't catch it. And we're not sure where it is at this point, because, they're beavers and they're pretty elusive. So, I feel pretty good where we are right now, and hopefully they will decide not to reestablish themselves in Lake Helene or something, because it's not just a beaver dam, that's a regular dam too, subject to state regulation, and stormwater management practices dictate that you really want to control the water flow there in a predictable fashion.
Right.
So that particular case really did call for relocation as soon as the season was upon us to do so.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to from the mayor and council, and who am I starting? I guess I'm starting.
We'll start with Ryan.
We'll start with Ryan. Go ahead.
That way I have less to say because Ryan covers everything.
I don't know. I'm going to cover a lot tonight, especially since we're a few colleagues short. We have extra time, right? Isn't that what that means?
Yeah, sure. There must have been something where you didn't make it to.
Yeah.
You can tell us about it.
Well, am I supposed to read this, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please
okay.
do.
All right. So I'll read that at the end. But let me just say, I'm sorry to hear that Delegate Barve, Chairman Barve, finds that his experiences and his travels to Gaithersburg can be damp on occasion, but I guess winter is coming eventually. But on a more serious note, I did want to just take a moment to make a comment about the devastating fire today in Paris at the Cathedral of Notre Dame. This is obviously a very sad loss of a cultural and historical monument, some 850 years old. But perhaps also a reminder, and perhaps also a timely reminder this week of faith observances and celebration of poetry and saluting of lives committed to service like that of Speaker Bush, that it's not really bricks and mortar and wood and stone that is the vessel for passing on our timeless human values, but rather it's the people, it's our communities, it's our actions, even in the face of tragedy. And I know that President Macron has already announced that he plans to rebuild the cathedral, which I think will be another wonderful human endeavor. So we wish them well. A few events that I attended in the last couple of weeks since our last formal meeting that I just want to mention of interest. On April 6th, I was invited to speak at a preparation class for the AP government exam at Gaithersburg High School. This is a special class for underclassmen that is operated on the weekends by the Education Foundation and their partners. Steve Augustino invited me to come and speak about the pro bono death penalty case that some of you know I've been working on for a good 15 years now, based in Alabama. An opportunity to talk about the constitutional elements of that case and how they sort of connect real world implications to some of the lessons that these high schoolers are learning about from precedential Supreme Court decisions and the Constitution. So that was a really neat opportunity to talk to those Gaithersburg High School kids, and I appreciated it. On April 10th, pretty much all of us from the mayor and council attended council and the communities meeting with the several of the neighborhoods around Brown Station Elementary School, and it was a really great session, very well attended. I think it's been said that there were about 100 people in the audience, a really good opportunity to talk about specific community issues and to let folks know about a lot of the programs and services that we offer in the city. So thanks to all the folks who turned up for that meeting. On April 11th, I attended the Montgomery County chapter meeting of the Maryland Municipal League along with Tom Lonergan. That one was hosted by our neighbors in Laytonsville. A lower key meeting, but a good one nonetheless, to talk about important issues at the county level affecting municipalities, particularly schools and co-locating of schools and wellness facilities, and some other issues that we talked about there. On April 13th, we had, of course, our annual Green Up Day. Many communities throughout the city organized stream cleanups and park cleanups, and I want to thank all the volunteers and other folks who were involved in participating in that as part of our Green Month activities throughout the month of April. And we also had a very special event on April 13th. Mike and Judd were there as well. This was a 10th anniversary event to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Bank on Gaithersburg program, the financial wellness program that has really grown to include many other services and programs that involve helping people establish financial independence and financial stability. And we really had a nice time with our keynote speaker, Michelle Singletary, who is a financial columnist for the Washington Post, and she was a very dynamic and entertaining presenter, telling folks some good tips on how to build your credit, reduce your debt, and become more financially independent and do some better budgeting for your family and for yourself.
But preaching it like the gospel.
Preaching it like the gospel. Some events that are coming up. Later this week, I'll be in Annapolis again for the Executive Committee meeting of the Maryland Municipal League, where we are going to be making recommendations on changes to the League's amicus policy, which Lynn helped in submitting some proposed edits for, so thank you, Lynn, for that. This is the policy that will allow the Municipal League to join in lawsuits with municipalities and other organizations around the state when there are important issues in play. So hopefully that will be of benefit to Gaithersburg as well. On April 22nd, there will be a STEM open house for children at the Gaithersburg Kentlands Mansion. So I know that a lot of kids are going to be on spring break, and if parents are looking for something to do with their children, that'll be a fun activity and also an opportunity to expand exposure to STEM. On April 27th, we'll be hosting our annual prescription drug take-back day. The police station actually has a drop box for prescription drugs to be safely disposed of anytime, but in particular we highlighted on April 27th and encourage folks to come by the police station during the designated times. And if you have any old prescription drugs in your house that no one's using anymore, you don't want to throw them in the trash, you don't want to dump them down the sink or flush them down the toilet, that's not safe. And so please bring them by and dispose of them on April 27th at the police station. April 28th, we have annual Pause in the Park. Looking forward to that. And then before I read this formal announcement, I just want to wish everybody a very meaningful Easter and Passover and other spring observances for those who will be observing them. And now a formal announcement. A rescheduled budget public hearing Announcement. A notice to the general public is hereby given that the budget public hearings have been rescheduled from Monday, April 15th to Monday, April 22nd. The following items will come before the mayor and city council. An ordinance to adopt the city budget for fiscal year July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, and levying an ad valorem tax on all accessible property within the city of Gaithersburg, Maryland, and constant yield tax and proposed property tax increase for the city of Gaithersburg for fiscal year 2020. Of course, it's not an actual proposed property tax increase. It is simply a hearing to note the change in the constant yield rate, which is something different. For more information, including the agenda, you can visit the city's website or contact the city manager's office at 301-258-6310. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Mike.
Okay, again, I want to thank our delegation, District 17 delegation, for being here tonight and telling us all the great things they did for us. That's always good to hear. And we could respond back that, yes, you did a lot of great things for us, and so we're thankful for that.
Yeah.
I want to congratulate, one of the dates that Ryan just discussed was the Bank on Gaithersburg 10th anniversary. I want to congratulate our staff for that, reaching that anniversary, but I think one of the important people to acknowledge here is Ryan Spiegel, my colleague, who attending his first National League of Cities conference right after you were elected, I believe. Who found this idea and brought it back, and our staff actualized it. So I think we want to make sure. I want to make sure that I acknowledge Ryan on that accomplishment. I think it's actually been a great value to a large portion of the community, and has resulted in the reinvestment, the personal investment of over $2 million on the part of those participants who've been able to take advantage of Bank on Gaithersburg and all the other things that we've rolled into that activity. So that's great. On April 4th, I attended an opening of a new business at 704 Quince Orchard Road. Mametas and, what is it, Miracule? I can't figure out what that name is, but it's another biotech that's decided to establish and plant its anchor here in Gaithersburg in one of our newest, newly renovated buildings. And so we're really excited to have them here, and hope that they'll continue to grow, as well as once that building is fully occupied, we'll have a lot of new stuff happening in the city. One of the upcoming events is happening a week from Thursday on April 25th at the Rossboro Cultural Arts Center at Asbury Methodist Village. That will be the State of the City address, in which we will get a report on the state of the city from the mayor. He gets to use his teleprompter, which is pretty cool.
It is, I can attest
He
to
really
that.
likes
It's cool.
it. He thinks it's cool. But we also recognize some important people and organizations from the community. Our Friend of Gaithersburg, our Citizen of the Year, and the Organization of the Year. So,
And new junior
then
mayor.
our new junior mayor as well. So all of that will happen. If you have a chance, if you're interested in attending that, you can contact City Hall for more information. You can look on our website. On a week from today, a number of us will be attending the ribbon cutting at the National Institute of Standard and Technology new solar field on basically the southeast side of the campus. So we're looking forward to that. Some new technology, and the fact that it's happening here in Gaithersburg is pretty cool. And then another event coming up before we have our next formal meeting is on May 4th. We have this will be the 4th Mia de Mayo, is that right? The 4th annual Mia de Mayo. That's a measured mile run that takes place on East Diamond Avenue from Girard Street down to Chestnut. That's almost a mile. There's a measured mile in that between those two intersections. I'll be there defending my senior title. Last year I won the first place in my age group, you guys can figure out what that is. So I'll be there to defend again, but it will be a big celebration. It happens to coincide also with the city's Cinco de Mayo celebration, so there'll be music, food, entertainment, etc. A big festival around that. So I hope if you don't come to run or cheer me on, at least you'll come to enjoy the entertainment as well. And then finally, so Sunday was Palm Sunday. It was the beginning of Holy Week, which culminates in the Easter celebration next Sunday. And it also coincides this year with the first night of Passover begins on Friday night at sundown, and that will continue through Saturday, April 27th. So whatever faith you practice, whether it's Christian or you're a member of the Jewish faith, this is a time of peace and rebirth, and so I hope you take the opportunity to be at peace with your community and with your neighbors, and remember what those religious observances mean, both to you and your family, but also to the general community, and how that helps us look at the world around us and how we interact with it. So if you're celebrating either of those occasions, then I wish you the best. And if you're just enjoying the fact that other people are celebrating, then that's fine too. But
basically, we wish everybody the best.
Everybody happy Passover, happy Easter, or whatever else you celebrate. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Mike. I do appreciate those sort of quasi-spiritual moments we have up here. Thank you both for your comments. I'm happy to associate myself with them and not repeat them. I do want to thank staff in particular for their work in putting together Council in the Communities event last week, which was tremendously successful. We had a big crowd, and I think people really appreciated the work of the city staff, as well as Bank On, and I'm probably leaving out a number of other things city staff's done lately to make us very happy and look great, but we appreciate their work every day. I'm glad Mike brought up State of the City. It's coming up a week from Thursday, and I hope you can join us. It's an evening where I think people generally do come out feeling pretty good about the city and you know how we serve you, and I think and we try not to make it boring. We try to make it fun. So hopefully we succeed this year. And again, I'm a broken record this time of year. May 18th is the book festival, and they've come up with a slide. I'm so glad. We're going to switch out the older logo with the 10th anniversary logo. But you can find out all the information you need at GaithersburgBookFestival.org, and I highly recommend you follow us on Facebook and Twitter because we put out a lot of stuff all the time. And with that, we're going to move on to From the City Manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Just two things. What we call the Kelly Park project, but which is properly named the Gaithersburg Cluster Elementary School Number 8 project, had a major step forward from the Board of Education last week. They identified and hired an architectural firm, Smolin, Emmer, Ilkovich Architects, and they assigned a budget to the project, $32.75 million. So now we have someone that's actively working on the feasibility studies and the environmental and things like that. We did post some things on the project page, but the hiring of the architect, which is a 7-figure contract, is a sign of seriousness, I think, of MCPS's backing of this particular school, wherever it ends up being.
And if I remember correctly, the materials that we've posted online indicate that they are going through and doing the feasibility studies where we've asked them to do it.
So where we've required them to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's a good sign, and we'll be working with the architectural firm to go through give them the backstory. They were not involved previously, and get them up to speed on our the points of interest of our letter that we sent a few months back. And then just a bit of information, Constitution Gardens. We let a contract, as you might recall, a pretty lucrative contract for landscaping and organic maintenance of that park. About, on a square foot basis, I think it was about 10 times what we would normally let for a park of that size. That contractor has quit because they just couldn't get it done. They were doing so much hand labor because I suspect it's because of all the rain we had last year. It's really difficult. We have replaced that contractor with a new contractor under the same terms and conditions for organic upkeep. So the experiment kind of continues, but with a new contractor.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, yeah, actually, I was wondering about that because I spent some time there yesterday with my granddaughter, and I noticed that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get it ready for the park season. So I'm glad to hear that we've got a new contractor. So, but I'll send some pictures along of things that need particular attention.
Thank you.
So,
We will move on to economic development update. Tom Lonergan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one item tonight. As most of you know, a clock commemorating Leonard Katz and Senator Sarah Wolfson Katz, the parents of our former mayor, current county council member Sidney Katz, once stood at the intersection of Summit and Diamond Avenues. Regrettably, over time, the clock did stop working, and experts estimated the cost of repairing the clock to be beyond the cost of replacing it entirely. Happy to report that after researching different models and designs, a new clock honoring the Katz family will soon be installed, not exactly at the spot where it was, as there's now a fountain there, but at directly adjacent to History Park. A photo of it put on the screen. Thank you, Chris. The clock, 2 faces, nearly 11 feet tall from top to bottom, maroon-colored, gold accent and backlighting provided by LED lights. A plaque memorializing the Katzes will be installed on the base. It's a handsome design, compatible with the train station as well as the adjacent public spaces and rolling stock. It's, of course, been looked at by the HDC for their approval as well.
It looks great. I really like that design.
so where's the location again?
Adjacent to History Park, kind of as you...
Okay,
Yep.
Community Museum. Okay.
Kind of be facing towards the tracks as well as towards
Great.
the plaza. Total cost, including installations, around $29,000. Our contractor has received an estimated manufacturer completion date of May 10th. Installation is expected shortly after that. I do want to call out and thank Kevin Edders from Public Works, who's been working directly with my shop on this project. It's a relatively modest project, working with the contractors and prepping for an installation smack in the middle of a public park and among historical assets has proved challenging. It's needed a lot of finesse and hand-holding, and Kevin has done a great job with that, so I just want to recognize him. That's all I got.
Great.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And since we have no more business this evening, I will see, do we have anything from the city attorney?
I did want to mention one thing. I think since Ryan mentioned the MML amicus policy, I want to publicly acknowledge Frank Johnson. He did a lot of work on a recent amicus brief that was submitted on behalf of MML and the Forest Heights versus the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. It was an important annexation case in Maryland that MML was successful, or the municipalities were successful on, and Judge Getty in his decision largely quoted out of Frank's brief.
Great.
More
I'm
so
glad
than
you
Forest
brought that
Heights
up.
brief. So I think he did a great job and
Yeah, thank
deserves
you.
recognition for that.
Thanks for reminding us, because this, Ryan did bring it to my attention and sent a message via email to the council and to you and to Frank, and to Tony and whoever else was copied on there. But it was, I meant to bring that up publicly. That's something to be really proud of, and we are very proud and appreciative of Frank's work on that.
And I'll just note that I also mentioned it at the most recent Montgomery County chapter MML meeting in Laytonsville. Made sure Tom was there, he heard it. Made sure all the municipal representatives from around the county were aware of this case and the work that Frank had done on that as well. And it was a 4-3 decision. So I think we can safely say that Frank's good work tipped the balance.
Yeah, that's a reasonable thing to say. So, anything else, Lynn?
Yep, that's it.
Anything from any other staff? Okay, well, as we mentioned earlier, join us next week for our budget public hearing, as well as our work session where we take a real deep dive into the budget. That is on April 22nd, right here at City Hall. Again, State of the City on the 25th. We hope you'll join us.